Music drifted through the art gallery as servers in starched uniforms carried trays of champagne. The event was meant to celebrate promising painters and sculptors, but no one cared about the artwork once chaos erupted in the center of the hall. I saw it all unfold in slow motion. Two men, one my former husband, the other my old flame, squaring off while curious onlookers parted to form a tense circle. I remember the sting of dryness in my throat. Mark, the man I once glorified for his wealth, leaned closer to me and whispered loudly enough that half the guests could hear him. "Where's your new Prince Charming? Didn't you say he'd whisk you away in style?" I forced a laugh, low and unconvincing. "He's busy tonight, but I figured we could have our own fun, right?" Mark lifted a brow. "Fun? Sure, like back in the day when I paid for every single indulgence of yours and you agreed to keep me around for entertainment. Remember that?" His tone felt more mocking than flirtatious. I hated how small it made me feel. But I was desperate. Desperate to show the world that I wasn't alone, even if my choice of companion was a man who saw me only as a trophy from the past. A voice rose from behind me, warm yet strangely distant. "I see you brought a date?" My heart jolted as soon as I recognized it. Ryan, my ex-husband. There he was, quietly stepping away from a cluster of admirers near the sculpture alcove. He wore a tailored jacket that highlighted his confident stance. I tried to speak, but Mark jumped in first with a sarcastic grin. Mark tossed a sneering look at Ryan. "I had no idea you'd be here, friend. Thought you'd be off rummaging for spare change since I hear your finances were always so meager." Ryan's calm expression flickered. Then he exhaled. "Whatever you heard, let's keep the personal jabs out of tonight. This event isn't about us." Mark gave a sharp laugh. "Us? There's no us. I'm just curious why Caroline left you, or did you leave her? Wait, maybe it was mutual. She wanted more money and you wanted to cling to your illusions." I touched Mark's sleeve. "That's enough, all right?" He shook me off. "Don't hush me. You brought me here to make a statement, so let me say what I want." Then he turned to Ryan and smirked. "You do realize she never stopped comparing you to me, right? She loved bragging that I was the real catch. I always joked she was my private investor in high-end suits. She even covered my tastes sometimes so I'd keep her close." My eyes darted around, noticing too many pairs of ears listening. A hush settled over the previously lively hall. Ryan's voice tightened. "Stop." Mark cut him off. "You that desperate for her? Did you pay for your illusions of love too, or was she giving out freebies by the time you rolled around?" I saw Ryan's jaw clench. For a second, he appeared to weigh the consequences. Then he took one step forward and struck Mark across the face with a single, precise punch. The blow sent Mark stumbling into a table, toppling glasses and a bottle of red wine, which splashed onto pristine marble floors. In the ensuing gasp from the crowd, Ryan stood there, breathing hard. Without glancing at me, he said quietly, "I didn't hit him because of her. It's about never allowing anyone to degrade another human being like that, even if she and I share a bitter past." His remark sliced right through me, as though he was reminding me how far I'd fallen from what we once had. And for one excruciating moment, I found myself at the center of a ring of judgmental stares, Mark nursing a bloody nose, Ryan pivoting on his heel to walk away. The world spun. My mouth felt full of sawdust as I realized that no one rushed to my defense. I was not the heroine. I was the cause of the fiasco. You might wonder how I ended up in that position, losing both my dignity and the respect of two men I claimed to love. The truth is, I was always playing a game with high stakes, all to feed my ego. My marriage to Ryan began years ago in what seemed like a storybook scenario, though I see now it was more complicated. Back then, I flaunted my taste for extravagance. If a new bag or shoes came out, I wanted them. Ryan was different. Steady, not flashy, with that quiet determination to build a stable life. I remember once complaining about our dinner arrangement. We can afford better takeout, can't we? Or maybe a private chef if you'd just step up your career. He offered a small grin. We have enough to get by. Getting by isn't enough. Don't you want more? He sighed, took off his tie, and poured me a glass of wine from a bottle that cost nowhere near the top-shelf labels I admired. I do want more, but I want it on my terms, not through some quick scheme or just to impress outsiders. I rolled my eyes. So you're saying I'm shallow? He rubbed his forehead. That's not what I said. I only wish you'd see the value in everything we do have. Had I known then what I know now, I might have realized that Ryan's unassuming behavior masked something far more significant. But I was too busy chasing illusions. It also didn't help that I had an ex-boyfriend, Mark, in the back of my mind. A man who bragged about his fortune at every turn. Whenever Mark's name came up, Ryan would go silent. I interpreted that silence as inferiority. I told myself it justified my criticisms of Ryan's lack of drive, never suspecting how deeply it wounded him. Late one evening, after yet another spat over something trivial, I let a reckless comment slip. If you made as much as Mark, I'd never have to lift a finger. Maybe then I'd treat you with the respect you crave. The words hung in the air like poison. He looked me straight in the eyes. He inherited the capital from a relative but never spent it frivolously. He wanted to see if you loved him for who he was. A pause. So he tested you by living simply. The day you compared him to that Mark character, he saw his answer. The words stung like a hornet's nest. My limbs went rigid. How could Ryan keep that hidden? How could he let me degrade him for lacking ambition, all while possessing the very fortune I used as a measuring stick? I thanked the acquaintance in a daze and left, my thoughts in shambles. Part of me felt outraged that Ryan had tested me like a lab rat, but a bigger part realized I had failed, spectacularly. The next day, I received official divorce documents. My hands shook as I turned page after page. The settlement offered was minimal, shockingly modest. Anger roared in my throat. Did Ryan honestly think he could walk away unscathed? For years, I'd supported him, yes, cynically and with endless demands. But still, we were husband and wife. Or so I'd believed. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. He's not some powerless figure you can manipulate, a voice in my head whispered. He's always had the upper hand. I tried calling him to protest. No answer. I left a terse voice message. You think you're punishing me? I deserve at least half, Ryan. I was your wife. You can't humiliate me like this. Click. End of message. I felt my breath racing, panic swirling in my chest. The restaurant hadn't changed. Dim lighting, white tablecloths, gold-plated menus. Exactly the kind of place where someone like Mark thrived. I remembered loving this place once, back when I thought candlelight could mask emotional darkness. Now, the air felt colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves knew I didn't belong here anymore. He arrived late, not fashionably, deliberately. The kind of entrance that says you wait because I'm worth it. And for a moment I let myself believe this meeting might be a turning. That perhaps someone who once knew me, really knew me, could help me steady the wreckage Ryan left behind. Then he smiled. That grin I used to mistake for charm now curled with something closer to cruelty. Heard you're single again, he said as he slid into the booth. Figured you'd come crawling back eventually. The word crawling hit harder than it should have. I forced a laugh. I'm not crawling, I just needed a familiar face. Ryan turned out to be a liar. Is that so? He picked up the wine list without looking at me. Or did he just outsmart you? My spine stiffened. He pretended to be broke. Who does that? That's not intelligence. It's manipulation. Mark looked up from the list, one brow raised. Or maybe he knew something you didn't want to admit. What's that supposed to mean? He signaled the waiter with 2 fingers, as if I were an afterthought. Then he leaned in, his voice low and smooth. "You've always chased comfort, Caroline. I mean, come on. You dated me for my bank account, didn't you? You married Ryan thinking he was your next investment. Maybe he just flipped the script." I gripped the edge of the table. "Why are you talking like this? You used to care about me." He chuckled without humor. "Care? I tolerated you because you made things interesting? You liked to look expensive, play the part. And I liked having someone on my arm who looked good in red. But love? No, that was never on the table. Never on." My mouth went dry. I had told myself for years that Mark had been my great love, that if things had just gone differently, we'd have made it. "You don't mean that." His eyes glinted. "I do. Look, you were a good time. You knew how to smile when the camera was on, laugh at jokes you didn't get. That was enough. But now?" He gave me a long once-over. "Now you're not even playing the part well. You're desperate, bitter, a little lost maybe." I opened my mouth to protest, but he kept going. "But here's the thing." He folded his hands over the table like he was offering a gift. "I can still make use of you. Not as a partner, let's not kid ourselves, but as company. Occasionally, I'll take you to events, dress you up. You'll look the part again. All you have to do is say yes." I froze. His voice dropped even lower. "You used to love being the pretty package on my arm. We could get that back for old time's sake." I searched his face for some trace of irony, some glimmer that this was a cruel joke, but found none. Just calculation. "I'm not that desperate," I said quietly, though the words felt hollow even to me. Mark smirked. "Oh, but you are. You've lost your golden goose. You're staring down the barrel of a middle-aged, no-income life, and I'm the best offer you're going to get." Something inside me cracked. Not rage, not grief, just the dry sound of reality settling in. "You actually think I'd take that?" I asked, voice shaking. He didn't flinch. "I think if I snapped my fingers right now, you'd come running. That's who you've always been, Caroline. A woman who hates the silence more than she hates being used." The silence that followed felt deafening. I pushed my chair back so hard it scraped the floor, drawing stares from nearby tables. My purse strap caught on the armrest, but I yanked it free. My breath came too fast, my heart louder than the soft jazz humming from the ceiling speakers. He didn't try to stop me, just took a sip of water, like I'd done exactly what he expected. I didn't look back. Outside, the air was sharp with autumn. I stood on the sidewalk shaking, not from the cold, but from shame, from clarity. Mark hadn't changed. He never would. But I had. Or maybe I finally saw myself, stripped of illusions, of men, of the life I thought I'd built. He offered to dress me up again, like I was a doll that just needed polishing. But I wasn't a doll anymore. I was cracked porcelain, and maybe that was the only thing real I had left. And I wasn't going to hand that over for a designer bag and a front row seat to my own erasure. Not anymore. In a swirl of desperate attempts to salvage my reputation, I latched onto Mark again. I rationalized it as showing Ryan I didn't need him. Mark, of course, took the opportunity to flaunt me like a sidekick. That's how we ended up at the art gallery fundraiser, where Ryan was a keynote sponsor. Mark obviously derived perverse enjoyment from stirring the pot in front of the crowd. We've already seen how the confrontation played out. How Mark's vicious jabs ignited Ryan's fury in a single punch. How I stood there in shock, watching my illusions crumble. When Mark crashed to the floor, a hush blanketed the watchers. Painful, suffocating silence. Ryan did not spare me a glance. He had grown so far beyond needing my approval that I suddenly felt invisible to him, more so than I'd ever felt in my life. In that moment, it dawned on me. Not only had Ryan outsmarted me financially, he'd also transcended me emotionally. My last shred of dignity shattered when Mark glared at me from the floor, blood trickling from his nose, and hissed, "Some help you are." Couldn't even shield me from a single punch. Cameras snapped, whispers festered. People who had once admired me from a distance turned away, pretending not to see the depth of my downfall. Or maybe they reveled in it. I could almost feel the schadenfreude. When you lose your spouse, your pride, and your illusions of grand romance, you assume it can't get worse. But it can. My finances began to plummet. Ryan froze most of our joint accounts during the divorce proceedings, which forced me to survive on a meager allowance and short-term loans from suspicious acquaintances. Eventually, I reached a point where I could no longer cover my rent or daily expenses. Creditors called daily. Friends from my old social circles vanished. Frantic for income, I took a position as a receptionist at a mid-sized tech firm. I deliberately avoided mentioning my last name in the application, hoping no one would connect me to the scandal. On my first day, the HR manager told me to fetch coffee for some visiting exec. The minute that exec strolled in, I felt the floor slip out from under me. She was the woman Ryan had started dating, Emily, the one rumored to have known the real him and admired his quiet power. She gave me a kind, almost pitying smile, as though unsure whether to acknowledge me or not. I tried to stand taller at the desk, but I saw in her eyes the flicker of recognition. She nodded politely, then asked if I could guide her to the conference room. I forced a pleasant tone. Absolutely. Right this way. My cheeks heated with the memory of all the times I'd refused to do such tasks for Ryan, insisting I was too good to play the domestic. Now, here I was, guiding his girlfriend to a meeting I was unworthy to attend. Inside that conference room, I recognized a few other faces, colleagues of Ryan. They all cast me sympathetic glances. I tried to pretend it didn't bother me, but the shame felt like a weight on my chest. Later, as I wiped down the table for the next group, Emily lingered. In a soft voice, she said, "You don't have to do this if it hurts." I wanted to snap back, but I only nodded. "I do. I need the job." She hesitated. "I'm sorry. None of this was personal. I cut in quietly. "He found someone who values him. It's all right. I get it now." That was the first time I admitted out loud that the root cause of my downfall was me. The divorce concluded without a fiery courtroom battle. I ended up with a fraction of the wealth I once believed was my right. Ryan donated a significant sum to a budding philanthropic venture, the one he'd championed in the gallery. When I read about it in the local paper, a pang of jealousy flared, but it was overshadowed by an odd sense of pride, as though, once upon a time, I might have stood beside him in that success. I overheard a conversation among some senior staff at the tech firm discussing Ryan's story. "He's funding scholarships for underprivileged students," one said. "Apparently, that's how he wants to use his secret fortune, and his new partner helps him identify those who need it most." Another chimed in. "It's refreshing to see someone invest in real causes, not just luxuries." Their words pressed painfully against my heart. I recalled the fights over silly extravagances, my constant demands. He'd always been so frugal, so measured. Now the world could see him as a quiet benefactor, while I was stuck cleaning up after board meetings, wishing I'd known how to appreciate him. Word around the office was that Mark's fortunes also took a dive. He parted ways with a bigger investor, got entangled in lawsuits, and eventually laid low. The final time I heard from him was a single text. "Told you so. You were always a backup plan, and now I don't need you either." I stared at the screen, rage boiling. Then a resigned laugh forced its way out. Mark had been a parasite, and I had invited him in. Maybe I deserved it. One evening, after I'd been working late, I spotted a figure waiting in the lobby. It was Ryan. He carried a small folder under his arm and wore a look of calm composure I'd once associated with stability. He caught my eye with a polite nod. "I didn't come to cause trouble," he said. I struggled to regain my composure. "All right. Then what brought you here?" He held up the folder. "There's some leftover paperwork for the divorce settlement. Just thought I'd deliver it rather than mail it." I felt my stomach twist. "Could have sent a courier." He sighed. "I could have. but I wanted to see how you're doing. My guard shot up. I'm fine. I don't need your pity. He looked down. It's not pity. I remember a time when I thought we'd grow old together. You were part of my life for years, so maybe a small piece of me still wants to check on you. I'm sorry if that's intrusive. Silence stretched between us. Then I let out a shaky breath. I was the one who let everything slip away. If you're expecting me to beg for your forgiveness, it's not. I can't even say I deserve it. His voice was gentle. Sometimes it's not about deserving. Sometimes it's about acknowledging we both made mistakes. A wave of surprise hit me. Mistakes? You? Hiding your money? He nodded slowly. Yes, that. I admit it was a test. I was afraid you valued me only for financial security. And when you mentioned Mark, it confirmed my worst fear. The tension in my chest grew tighter. I can't change the past. He gave a faint smile. Nor can I. But we can move on. I'm doing so with my life, and you should too. At that, he turned to leave. I called after him. Ryan? You deserved someone who saw your heart, not your paycheck. He paused, then nodded once more without looking back. And you deserved someone who embraced your strengths, not just pointed out your flaws. But I guess we're both learning. Then he was gone, and I stood there, alone, with the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights in an empty lobby. I don't expect sympathy for my choices. I spent so much time chasing fantasies of wealth, mocking the partner who quietly stood by me, that I lost track of decency. In the end, justice was served. Ryan walked away with his dignity and fortune. Mark exposed himself as a manipulative opportunist, and I fell from the social pedestal I once flaunted. Public humiliation, financial ruin, and the cold realization that I'd shaped my own downfall. That was my reckoning. Yet somehow, I'm still here. I'm not writing from a place of triumphant redemption. I'm writing because I need to finally be honest, both with myself and with anyone who might read this. If there's a lesson to glean, it's that appearances and superficial gains will never substitute for genuine respect, kindness, and personal growth. A part of me hopes that in sharing this confession, someone else might recognize the warning signs in their own relationships before it's too late. Another part of me is simply tired of hiding behind excuses. The truth is messy, but it's the only way forward. I still see Ryan occasionally in online articles or social media postings about his philanthropic efforts. He and Emily appear content in the photos, championing causes that uplift others, and I'm working as a receptionist, finishing the last bits of the day's tasks. Sometimes I find small peace in the quiet routine, free from the arrogance that used to define me. No, I'm not a hero, but I do hope this story of betrayal, both mine and his, serves as a cautionary tale that arrogance and shallow comparisons can destroy what might have been a real, honest, loving life. At least now, as the world forgets my short-lived glamour, I can learn what real humility means. I have no illusions that Ryan is waiting for me to reconcile, nor do I have illusions that Mark will reappear as my knight in shining armor. My illusions died, replaced by a stark desire to become a better version of myself. And that, I believe, is the only true redemption I can strive for. Whoever reads this, thank you for listening to a cautionary tale of how one woman's misguided pursuit of more led to the ultimate loss. And how sometimes the greatest act of justice is simply watching the person who wronged you, who also loved you once, walk away to live a life that proves they never needed your approval at all. Because in the end, we can only save ourselves.